Today's tutorial is going to be for a hair tools bag. Now I have had the worst luck with hair dryers lately. I've been through 3 hair dryers in the last month. I had one of the expensive Shark hair dryers and it just decided to quit working. And so I pulled out an old school hair dryer that I had laying around in my closet, and within a week it stopped working. So then I went to the dollar store around the corner to get a hair dryer because I had wet hair and I needed to blow dry my hair. And within 2 weeks, that one started spitting out little shards of plastic. So I treated myself to a nice hair dryer, and instead of buying a Dyson, I bought the one from Sally Beauty, which I'm very happy with, but it had 8 attachments with it. So I needed something to hold all of these attachments in. And I thought, well, what better way to do that than to make a bag, because that's what I do. So using my Bella boxy bag pattern, I resized it to come up with one that would hold all the attachments for this. So my guess is that it will also fit a Dyson hair dryer, since this is kind of a dupe for that one. So when I made this one, I just quilted it with some thin quilt batting that I had here in my studio, and I wish I would have used a little bit thicker quilt batting because I wanted it to be a little more structured, and I also wish I would have put a little handle on the end of it. So in today's tutorial, we're going to revamp this and make it so that it does have a handle and it's a little bit more structured. But I thought, why not mix it up a little bit and make it a little bit more fun? So the supplies that you're going to need for this tutorial are a little bit of quilt batting, and all the measurements are included in the printed instructions on my website. So you're going to need a little bit of quilt batting. You're going to need some quilt cotton. And for this one, I'm going to line it with terry cloth. So I just went and found a towel that matched my fabric, because I couldn't find any terry cloth when I went to Hobby Lobby this last time. They didn't have any at all. So I just used a hand towel for this. And I'm going to sandwich my quilt batting in between those so that it gives it a little bit more structure than the first one that I made. So some other things that you're going to need for this bag, some clips, some pins, scissors, matching thread, your sewing machine, all the basic sewing notions and sewing machine that you already have, plus some webbing. This is 1-inch nylon webbing. You could use cotton webbing if you wanted to. You could use ribbon, you could use twill tape, you could make your own little strap if you wanted to, but this is easy peasy, and I already have this one that matches this, so we're just going to use some of that. And since that one's nylon, it's nice because you can use a lighter to seal the edges so that it doesn't fray. And then you'll need a couple little scraps of fabric to bind some of the seams on the inside of this bag. So make sure you gather all of your supplies and let's get started. So your first step is going to be to quilt your fabric to your lining. You can line this with quilt cotton if you want to. That's what I did with this one. It's just lined on the inside with a coordinating quilt cotton, and I used batting. I wish I would have used thicker batting or even flex foam so that it had a little bit more structure. So I'm hoping with this one, using the quilt batting that I already had that I used on this one, plus this terry cloth, it'll give it a little bit more body and stability. Otherwise, you could use a thicker quilt batting if you wanted to, or if you like them like soft and squishy, you can do it that way too. But you're going to just sandwich your batting in between your outside fabric and your lining. And you can use spray adhesive to keep this together, like a 501 spray based, or I'm just going to put pins all over mine. And then that way I can quilt lines on here, and all the layers won't shift and move. I am going to mark my lines on here. I don't know exactly what kind of pattern I'm going to do, but you could quilt it in any pattern that you want. So I'm going to go to the machine and get this quilted and then meet you back here. You're also going to need some zippers, or a zipper. I like to use zipper by the yard. You can use a really long zipper that's a little bit longer than your project. All the measurements are in the pattern. Either way, but you will need a zipper to go along with this. So I'm going to pin all this together and go get it quilted and then I will be right back here to show you how to put the zipper on. Okay, I have quilted my piece to my terry cloth and I sandwiched my quilt batting in between, but the edges of this terry cloth are very, like, it just is fraying and making fuzz everywhere. So I broke out my trusty dusty serger. And if you've never used a serger before, they can be a little bit intimidating. But if you have an opportunity to get a serger or to borrow a serger, they're so much fun. Now, it does have a blade that cuts off the edge when you sew. So what a serger does is it loops threads around the edge of your fabric or your project, and it trims off the excess so that it binds the seams or puts like a finish on your seams. If you have any ready-to-wear items, you can look on the inside, and chances are that the seams in there have been serged or overlocked. I've had this machine for like 15 years. I love this one. This is a Janome 7034D, but sergers are sergers. You just find one that you like. That they are a little complicated to thread, but once you have it down, you've got it. But since this terry cloth seems to be fraying and putting little fuzz everywhere, I thought I'm going to serge all 4 edges of this. In the pattern, you only have to serge the edges that are going to go up against your zipper, which is the longer edge of your rectangle. You might be able to hear Goose in here. He's up from his nap and he's playing. But I'm going to go ahead and serge this. I'm going to do it off camera because it's quite loud. And then I'll meet you back right here to show you how to put in your zipper. All right, once you have the edges finished, you can finish it any way you want. If you don't have a serger, you can use your machine and just do a zigzag stitch over the 2 long edges of your rectangle that the zipper is going to be attached to. You just want those edges finished so they don't fray and get caught in your zipper teeth. So this is Zipper by the Yard. When you buy Zipper by the Yard, it comes with a whole bunch of these little zipper pulls that you just add on. So you can just cut it to any length that you want it. I like it because you can get the zipper pull. You don't have to have the pull on there, and so it's not in the way when you're sewing. If you're using just a regular zipper that you've purchased, buy one that is like 20 inches long or longer so that you can get the zipper pulled off of here completely out of the way. And that makes sewing a zipper on way easier. But you're going to take your zipper and you're going to put it teeth side, which is the right side, to the right side of your fabric along the long edge of your rectangle. And I like to use these little clips when I'm sewing zippers because they hold them on nice and tight. And you want to extend your zipper just a little tiny bit past that edge, because when we fold it back, we're going to top stitch that down and that will hide that seam. So I'm just going to clip this on, right sides together, and then I'm going to go sew right along the zipper teeth. And I have an 1/8 inch presser foot on my sewing machine, but if you don't have a skinny a skinny presser foot on your machine, be sure to put your zipper foot on your sewing machine. Okay, now we're just going to take this under our machine and we're just going to sew right along the edge of these zipper teeth. And once you got that sewn on, you're going to flip it back with both the right sides up. And then this edge of your zipper is going to be facing your project. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to top stitch on the top side of that. You can press it with an iron, but it's such a small amount that you should be able to just hold it back. And I'm going to do it just a little more than 1/8 of an inch away from that edge. I can kind of see where the edge of my zipper is. So you kind of want to go along that edge of the zipper tape right here. You could also do it this direction on the back if you wanted to, so that you make sure that you catch all of your zipper in there. But then you'll just go along this edge of your zipper tape. So that's what it looks like on the front. What top stitching this will do is help keep this edge of the fabric out of your zipper teeth, because you know sometimes when you unzip something like a bag or something and the lining or the top gets caught in the zipper teeth and then your zipper pull won't move, this helps prevent that. So then you're going to take your bag and you're going to flip the other side up to match right side to the right side of your zipper. Make sure these edges are lined up straight, and you're just going to clip that to your zipper and repeat that same process. I like to sew from the zipper side up so that I can kind of feel where those zipper teeth are. And another good thing about zipper teeth are that instead of trying to fold this back and try to top stitch it with like this, which would make it very difficult, you can pull the entire zipper apart and work on a flat surface, which makes it super easy when you are installing zippers. And I'm going to trim my zipper my zipper tape. Then that way, hopefully it will line up nice and straight. The other thing you can do with the zipper tape is you can take a lighter, because it's nylon, and you can just tap it to the edge and it will melt it just a little bit, and that will prevent it from fraying. So let's try that one again. So zipper pull, flat side facing you, pointed side up. But still, when you look at your zipper together, you're going to notice the teeth start on one side or the other. So the teeth are still starting on my left side. So I'm going to put that side in first and then put in my right side. And then when you pull down, they'll just slide right on. So once you get it started, you can take it out of the zipper jig and then just put it on. Now you can finagle these little zipper pulls on by hand like this. This just helps you kind of hold it like a third hand. So you're going to get your zipper zipped almost all the way up, and you're going to fold this in half with the zipper on one side and your folded side on the other. And you need to mark where this fold is. And I'm just going to do that with a little pin. So on the open side of the zipper, I'm just going to hold it together so that I know about where the center is down here. And then you're going to refold this flat, centering your zipper with that center mark right there where we put the pin. Now on the side that's open, you just want them touching. And you're going to line up your sides and add some clips. And on the other side where it's closed, you're just going to line up those zipper teeth with that pin that we put in there and add some clips. And we're going to sew across these two sides. Now, to box the corners on this in a further step, we're going to be cutting out little squares on each corner. And when you cut through this seam, it tends to unravel and pull apart, which makes your little squares for boxing your corners a little bit wonky. So I have a trick for that. In this pattern, you are going to, let me grab some pins real quick while I'm talking. You're going to be doing 1.5 inch squares. And so what I like to do when I'm sewing this side seam, I will measure in whatever size my square is. This one's going to be 1.5, and I will mark it right there. And when I'm sewing this side seam, I'm going to back stitch here, start my seam, sew it down, back stitch at this mark, keep going, and I'll back stitch again on this side at the 1.5 mark, or whatever size your box corner is going to be. This works whenever you're making any kind of box corner bag. So I'll back stitch here and then keep going. And then that way, when I cut my square out, I'll be cutting through where I've back stitched, and then this seam won't pull apart or unravel. So I'm going to do that on both sides, just so I know about where to back stitch there. And then you're going to sew these two side seams all the way across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to move my quilting guide off of here, and let's kind of zoom in down here. And now we're going to sew across these two side seams. So when I get to where I made that mark, I'm just going to back stitch back and forth a couple times, and then I can take that pin out. And then when you come to the zipper where it's open, if you'll just hold it with the zipper teeth touching, then that will close up the zipper on that end. I like to back stitch over my zipper too, just a little bit. That just gives it a little bit more reinforcement. You don't have to, but I always do. It's just a habit. So I'm going to back stitch at that next 1.5 inch mark and then down to the end. So now when I cut through there, this seam won't come apart. So I'm going to repeat that on the other end. All right, our next step is going to be to make our little squares. And like I said, in this pattern, we're going to be using 1.5 inch squares. And so I'm going to use this air erasing marker since this is terry cloth and it's a little bit hard to mark on. And I have this nifty little corner marking tool from Carolina Little Stitches. I love all of her templates. I use them a lot. But if you don't have something like this, you can just use a regular old ruler. And you are going to mark in from the folded edge 1.5 inches. Oops, let's do 1.5, not 2.5. And I just make a little dot there so I know how far in it is. And then you're going to measure up from your seam, not from this edge, from your seam. Otherwise, your corner will turn out the wrong size. So I'm going to go up 1.5 inches at that mark, and then in 1.5 inches from the folded edge and draw a little rectangle. I'm going to do this on all 4 corners, and then I'm going to cut those out. And remember, we back tacked right here on this seam so that it won't pull apart. So here it is using one of these little corner marking tools. I'm going to put 1.5 on that seam and 1.5 on this fold, and then I can just mark my little square that way. So we're going to cut those out, and then we're going to box our corners. All right, I'm going to cut my little squares out. This also helps to have really sharp scissors. Okay, now that I have all 4 squares cut out, I'm going to bind this edge. Since I serged this, I don't technically need to, but in case you just have done it with your zigzag stitch, or if you didn't finish that edge at all, you'll need to put some sort of binding on it. This is just some bias tape that I made out of some quilt cotton. You could use purchased bias tape. You could make your own. You can buy some binding on, I think Wonderground Fabrics has some sort of binding, but you're just going to cover that seam with your binding. And you're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so you're basically stitching right over that stitching line you already made. And these 2 edges can be raw edges because they're going to get covered up in our final step. So it doesn't really matter if they are not finished. Okay, now our project is getting quite thick, so if your machine has problems sewing through very thick stuff, this next part might be a little bit challenging for you. But I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to figure out which way it zips up. So it zips up towards this end, so that is the end that I'm going to put my handle in. So I've already cut my little piece of nylon. I'm going to take a lighter, my nylon webbing, sorry. I'm going to take my lighter, and since it is nylon, I'm just going to melt the ends of this webbing so that it doesn't fray out of the seam. And so you're going to take your squares that you've cut out, and we're going to box those corners. And the side where the zipper closes is where we're going to put our handle. So I'm going to open these up and push this seam allowance away from the zipper. And you want to make sure that you get all of the fabric from the outside like pulled nice and flat in there so that you don't have any bunching or puckering. And then you're just going to stick your little handle in one side and out the other, making sure that it doesn't twist in there. And I like to leave about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch of this hanging out so that I make sure that I catch it in that seam. And then I'm just going to center that on this seam right here. And I'm going to put a couple of clips in there to help hold this. And then we are going to sew this across this seam right here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You want to back stitch really well at the beginning and the end so that you have nice firm corners. And this is where it can get a little bit thick right here. So sometimes I'll go back and forth over that a couple of times just to make sure I'm catching all of those stitches. And then when you get done with that side, you're going to make sure that your handle is going straight through, and we're going to do the opposite corner. Okay, so it should look like this on that end. And then you're going to repeat these corners with no handle on the other end. Then we're going to trim all of this off and make it all nice and even so that we can bind these seams just like we did this one. Okay, now we're going to take our bias tape and we're going to put bias tape on these corners also. Cut it just a little bit longer than what you need so that you can take it, and you're going to fold the edge in so that you don't have a raw edge on these. These will be the finished edges. I'm going to pop a little clip on there. And that one I cut a little bit too long. Cut a little bit off of there. And then fold that edge in. And then you're just going to take this to your machine and you're going to sew right over that same seam again. So 1/4 inch away from that edge, making sure that you catch the back side of this binding also. And then trim off any of your little threads that you have, because that will make it look way more professional if there's no threads sticking out. I'm going to do that to all the rest of the corners. All right, we have all of our corners finished, and so now we are going to turn it right side out. So we're going to open up our zipper and flip all these corners out. I like to take my thumbs and kind of push those corners out nice and sharp. I am loving the terry cloth on the inside of this, but I'm not going to lie, it has made a huge mess in this studio. Like when you cut terry cloth, it just like, I don't know, sheds everywhere. All right, then we can zip it up, and yes, that gave it way more structure than my first one, adding the quilt batting with the terry cloth. It's got a nice little handle on the end, so you can grab it out of your suitcase or your bag. And let's see if my whole hairdryer fits in there. So we have the body with the cord. What I liked about this is it doesn't look like it's going to all fit in there, but then when you get it all in there, it's a nice compact thing that'll fit right in your suitcase, and then you can stack other things on top of it. So I have the 2 big wands. I have the 2 little wands in there, and I have the nozzle, and then I think I probably still have room to put the oval round brush in here also. So then you can just zip it up, grab that handle and go stick it in your suitcase, and you can head off on your next trip. So, or I keep mine in the bottom drawer of my bathroom. So then that way it's easy for me to grab out of there and put on my counter and use it. And then it's all contained in the drawer. I don't have 100 pieces going everywhere. So I hope you guys loved this tutorial. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, comment below, all the things. If you make one, be sure you tag me on social media. I'm at By the Bay Bag Co. on everything. If you want to see a compact version of this tutorial on TikTok, there's one on there that's like 10 minutes long. I don't show you any of the actual sewing in that one. I just give you all the steps to do. And if you'd like to purchase the pattern so that you have all the measurements, it's only $5. It's on my website, bythebaybagco.com. And if you found this video and you have no idea how to sew, I would love to teach you. I'm on a mission this year to teach as many people as I can how to sew. And I'm also on a mission to release one pattern a week. So by the end of the year, I have 52 patterns in my website. So if you would like to learn how to sew, I do have an online sewing academy that you can work at your own pace. And I teach you every step of the way from the very, very beginning of not knowing anything how to do on a sewing machine through making several patterns and projects on your own. And it's video tutorials, so I am sitting right there with you while you sew. So if you're interested in that, it's at quickstitchacademy.com. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.